Patrick's a bright, enthusiastic little boy who's keen to learn.
He's just like any other little boy who's 5, 6 years old, and he tries to do and keep up with his friends and his brothers. Patrick's got a neuromuscular genetic disorder called spinal muscular atrophy, which means all his muscles are very weak. So not only are his leg muscles weak, but also his arms and his fingers, which means it's very difficult for him to do anything practically like hold a pencil and write.
Okay, before he had the mouse and keyboard, he was struggling because his hand control was poor on the mouse, and pressing it all the time was difficult for him.
He couldn't actually touch, press the mouse, have sufficient power behind to press the mouse to make it respond.
And the keyboard, he was pressing other keys rather than the keys that he wanted to use.
Before the assessment, Patrick was not able to access a computer as he wished to be able to, and as a child of his age would normally be able to do. When it was Patrick's turn to play a game on the computer, either he would sit there with one of his brothers or myself, and we would actually have to use the buttons for him. We were very fortunate in the fact we had an initial assessment at school. We started off with the mouse initially because that's what Patrick was finding most frustrating.
He was assessed and a variety of keyboards and mice were used.
This moved on to home, where we were actually given a laptop by ACE and all the different mice that Patrick was able to use and try out over a period of time.
From that, it was determined that he'd use the small keyboard that he's using now and the glide pad.
Which was lovely because the ones that we initially thought would be great, actually over time and use, with Patrick being able to sit there and actually use them, found that they weren't actually the ones that were the best.
He just runs his finger across the glide pad and he uses that rather than the clicking, the traditional mouse. He finds that so much easier.
Whereas with the glide pad, again, he can easily still move it, but it just relies on his touch, and that has made life so much easier for Patrick.
The keyboard he's using now is very compact. Range of movement, he doesn't have to stretch his arm too far. It means that I don't have to intervene in moving the keyboard for him. He can just access the keys he wants to use. Previously, Patrick would have been asking his buddy to type for him. He can do that himself now.
Patrick also uses a piece of software called Point and Click, which has enabled him to click and drag objects, which again is something he'd wanted to do previously, which I think he'd needed to do within games. At home, it's made a massive difference to Patrick in the fact that he's actually independent now on the computer. For a lovely instance, for Christmas, he was able for the first time to actually send an email to his cousins who live in New Zealand, thanking them for his Christmas present, which he did independently, effectively. He typed in the thank you and everything, which is something he'd never been able to do before. It's meant that it's freed up his brothers from having to play with him, so Patrick now is independent, and it's removed all the frustration for Patrick that he'd felt previously around computers.
Obviously, as Patrick moves up the school, he would be writing more, doing more written work, whether that's written by hand or with the computer. And now we can see a way forward that as he progresses through the school, that he'll be able to work independently instead of myself and my other colleague scribing for him.
By Patrick having these computer aids, it will enable Patrick to, from a computer point of view, be able to access everything that his peers are doing.
Working with my old keyboard and mouse was hard. It's easier now with my new mouse and keyboard. I can do the same things as everybody else.